It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, March 20th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content. Is wondering what the long term effects of this Couturier healthy scratch will be.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. You can find us on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, the win aside, which we will, of course, get to, as well as your mailbag questions today, but I gotta think that this healthy scratch of Sean Couturier, A, could have been avoided in the first place, and B, could have some, I would say, medium to long-term effects here, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, first thing is you saw that GM Danny Briere said this is Torch's sole decision. So he didn't want any part of it because he knows as a player what this possibly could do. Other than calling it like a gimmick kind of move to spark a team, that's really what it was.
Yeah.
Now, and I think it worked for a period. But then I think after a period, guys started, again, there's tired guys. Like there's just so much blood you can get out of a stone sometimes. And that's a big part of this.
Right. And I think that, it's just one of those things where he's a newly named captain of this team. He's extremely well respected. He's extremely well loved. And so, under the auspices that Tortorella likes to talk about is I make decisions based on the individual game and how people are playing individually, what makes sense to do a lineup. I think it does to some degree come into conflict with the whole, team mentality, locker room approach
Right.
that he's trying to instill. And I just see a direct conflict there by making this sort of decision.
Yeah. I mean, I've covered this Flyers team a very long time. I can't remember the last time an agent came out and spoke out against the coach. And Sean Couturier's agent did. And that takes a lot. And that means there's significant frustration from the player, from the agent, everything. And that's not good. It doesn't matter. The Flyers are
No.
pros. They're going to go out and play their game, but they are also humans. And
Yep.
there are definitely some questioning today, even after a win. Why did we do this?
You can look at this decision in the context of the isolated Flyers versus Leafs game that John Tortorella likes to do and say, I'm making decisions for this game and what makes sense in terms of a lineup in order to win this particular game, and say, sure, it makes some degree of sense based on the limited minutes Couturier's been getting and quality of play. But if you look at the bigger picture here, like, these implications could cause more harm than good.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you're definitely weakening your team, regardless of what his point production might be. I mean, it seems like this is all over point production, not anything else he does. And so I was watching, and through two periods, the Flyers were pretty good on faceoffs. Third period, they started to sag badly. And what happened then is, so last minute of the game, there's a big faceoff in the Flyers' end, and I'm curious, who's taking that faceoff? Scott Lawton against John Tavares. He lost that in like 2 seconds, and it gave the Leafs a couple other shots to tie the game. That is a tactical mistake. Lawton was only 36%. And I get it. He had a nice goal off a turnover, but still doesn't mean he should have taken that faceoff. So again, you're now forcing to change guys' roles because of something you did. And yes, it worked out this time. Most times it's not going to work out because the Leafs hit 5 posts. We wouldn't be talking about a win if it weren't for that. But that's fine. But the point is, he changed the way the game was going to go tactically at the end of the game when it's vitally important. And regardless of what you think of Sean Couturier, if he just has to take a face-off in his own end and win it, he's going to win it a lot of, 75% of the time sometimes.
Exactly, and I think that's where you have to look at, even within the confines of this game versus the Leafs, you needed him as a face-off specialist in this game regardless. And I would say that, what we've been talking about over and over again on this show is that the better strategy in the big picture would have been to maintenance healthy scratch Sean Couturier intermittently throughout this season, given his coming back from injury and his stamina and everything that goes along with coming back from a big injury like him. And people would have understood if you said from the beginning, from time to time, we might scratch Sean
Yeah,
Couturier
we have a
just to give
plan for
him some
Sean.
rest.
Yeah,
Hmm. Like, it would have gone over fine with him, with the rest of the players, with the fans. They didn't do that, and they, wrote him into the ground to a
yeah,
large degree, and that, I think, caused his play to deteriorate. Now, he's not gonna tell you that because he's a
no,
warrior and a competitor, and so, he's going to want to play every minute that he can in every game. And that's natural and that's fine. But if you had, preset expectations like that, none of this would have been an issue. And I just, this really could have some like longer term implications, like I said.
yeah, and the same kind of planning could have been done for Cam Atkinson, who's also had come off serious surgery. But uh, and there's a difference with Farabee. He's younger, so when Torts didn't do that, him coming off the artificial disc is different than that neck fusion. And so, knowing that Atkinson is an older player, they could have done the same thing, but they didn't. And now he doesn't want to use Atkinson. Okay, but like you might have had him late in the season had you done the same kind of course of action.
Exactly. And I think the other part of it too is, then you can transition into, okay, well, what lineup did they ice? The fact that you had Nick Delorier in this game for under 6 minutes, all he did was get into a fight, essentially. Why couldn't Sean Couturier have been in the game for those 6 minutes and taken those
Mhm.
faceoffs? Why?
Right. Well, I'll tell you why. Because last game, the Flyers complained that the Leafs had their starting power play out when they got the sixth goal. Hey, this isn't even the Leafs starting power play. It wasn't 2 weeks ago either. Look at some of the guys they have playing, and you see that they're not everyday players, but they did it. And so the Flyers were mad. And so I saw at the beginning of the game, I took a picture there. I saw Reeves and Delorier close, and you just
Yeah.
knew it was going to happen. And so, yeah, I mean, and actually,
It's
my
just
picture didn't get it
theater.
quick enough. Yeah, it's just theater. That's all it was. It was all theater.
Yeah. At the expense of what? I just think
Team
that is
pride, making
yeah,
the coach happy.
that is my problem with the whole decision, and then Delorier and all of that is like, at what cost?
Right.
And like, I do understand they won the game, and I want to talk about that because there were some other interesting aspects
Oh,
to
yeah.
the game as well. And we will do that coming up next.
Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts. For your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com.
As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. And baseball fans, today, March 20th at 7 p.m., is the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. Be the first to get local insight from MLB local experts of Locked On. Find it today at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. So Russ, the Couturier scratch aside, this
Mhm.
was a really interesting game, I think, because clearly there was a game plan in terms of trying to tamper down the Leafs offense. And, you alluded to it in the first segment, but for a good chunk of the first half of the game, I think they did a really good job of keeping the Leafs from getting good opportunities.
They did. They did, and they were doing some things they hadn't done before. I think, look, again, we've talked about it. Yinning with Adder is a good pairing, and
Hmm.
I even have reporters saying to me now, well, Yinning looks better now. And I said he just needed time to process things. Sometimes if a guy comes up and it's his first couple of NHL games, he might look slower because he's thinking a little more. Now people were saying, yeah, we didn't even notice Yinning half the time, which is always a good thing. And so, and Adder got on the scoreboard and that was good too. And he played well. So there's that aspect of it. And that all happened by accident. It could have not, they could have planned it, but they didn't. And that's how a lot of the stuff happens with John Tortorella and the young players, unfortunately. But it's worked out, and it's worked out well for them. Morgan Frost clearly was wanting to get revenge on the team he grew up watching, and that was great. He really stepped up.
Yes.
I mean, Tippett just threw the shot on net, which is fine. That's what you should do. And he really got in the way and helped that first goal happen. And then he got a goal later in the game, which was a real sniper goal. And I just hope that that is not a tryout for the Leafs, like, hey, to come and trade for me in the offseason. Because I can't tell you that with this coach that Morgan Frost is guaranteed to be there next year because the only time he talks about him is in negative terms, right? We've brought that up on the show. But Frost has really risen to the occasion here. I know the GM likes him. I don't know if the coach likes him. And it's a weird thing to say.
It is really weird. I do want to go back to Adder and Ginning a little bit,
Yes.
just because, yeah, I think you're spot on. They look so good together as they have on the Phantoms, as we've talked about for the entire season, and that we wanted them to be a pairing with the Flyers
Right.
eventually, or at least try it out,
Yeah.
because they have such good chemistry. But I also think that those two playing together helped Adard a lot in terms of his confidence. And Adard had some really great outlet passes, aside from the point he got on the board. I just thought he was really heads up and making the smart plays we know he could do. And I thought that was really important. And then, Morgan Frost, I just appreciate everything he was trying to do out there. I think that he is, as we've mentioned before, sometimes Travis Konechny tries to put the whole game on his shoulders, and I think that um, Morgan Frost does the same thing on occasion, but against the Leafs especially so.
Yeah. I mean, are they going to scratch Travis Konechny because he hasn't scored in a month? You know what I mean? Like he's
Oh
struggling out there,
God,
but they're not going to do that. We know they're not going to do that. But yeah, he's struggling.
no.
Tippett set him up, and he didn't get the goal, and then you saw he kind of was like, bummed out. It's really weird because half of this team like rose to the occasion, and half of them just played the same way they've been playing. And I don't know if they could do anything about it. Like I said, I think it's physical.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think it's anything to do with attitude or
No.
competitiveness or anything. It's just this team is worn down a little bit. I do want to talk about Owen Tippett's goal because it was not just good because it set the tone at the beginning of the game and was a really good play, but it was a possession play. It was not a goal on the rush, which is mostly what we see from Owen Tippett. And he had time to, like, the puck was on his stick for quite a bit of time there, and he had time to think about it, and he still made a really smart shot, and the goal went in. And so I think that aspect of his goal was more important to me than anything, was that it was a different kind of goal for him.
Yeah, it was. And that's a fair point. And like I said, and I think Frost helped a lot on that too. And
Right.
that's something where a lot of players haven't been willing to get in the net and stay in the crease and bother the goalie. So yeah, the combination of that was really good. You should be able to see more of that, honestly. That
Yeah, I think that, one of the other aspects of this game is, a theme we've been talking about a lot recently, which is ice time.
yeah,
So you look at who's getting what kind of ice time and how much of ice time, especially as we talk about the team being worn down to some degree. And so the ice time is still an issue for the top defensemen. Travis Sanheim with over 26 minutes, Cam York with over 26 minutes. Now, Cam York had a banger of a game, I would say.
yeah, he did. He had a great
Um,
game.
and so I'm not begrudging him those minutes, but if you're going to run into the same problem as Travis Sanheim getting overplayed for the rest of the season, I just don't want that to become a trend as well, because we saw what it has done for Sanheim. Now he also had a great goal in this game, so I don't want to
He had a
like,
mixed bag of a game, unfortunately. Like,
yeah,
the goal was great, other things were
yeah,
not so great. Um, but it's tough. I mean, again, he's
yeah,
learning how to play that top position against the top players in the league, and this is a learning thing for him too. I mean, Sam Ersson really did hold him in it because, like I said,
yeah,
if the Leafs
and the
didn't have,
post,
yeah,
Samerson and the
and
post,
and look, I'll say a couple of those posts were because of the way Urson played it, but a
yeah.
couple of them weren't. And I actually thought, and I even said to somebody next to me, I think the Leafs on this last possession for the Flyers when they have the power play, I said I think the Leafs are going to get a shorthanded goal. They've been kind of itching towards it, and sure enough, Matthews went down the end, made a great shot, and really had it in the corner. And it just was one of those shots. The Nylander one defied logic. How that didn't go in, right? It just
Right.
he stick handle past the whole team. But again, Urson, when there were some really big plays, big pileups, or a lot of pileups, and he came through on that. So that was a good game for him. Didn't matter how many goals were given up. Like, that was a tough game.
Oh, totally. And I just think that Urson was a huge, huge factor here. And yeah, you're right. The goals don't matter.
No, no, no. He was a big factor, and it was good because in the third period things were breaking down around him, and he didn't panic.
And I think the other last thing we need to talk about is the power play, which is related to the ice time issue, because we still didn't see Ronnie Attard, but we did get that younger second power play unit that we talked about yesterday. And they didn't score; they only
No.
had two power play chances. But I do think there was some continued slight improvement there in terms of puck movement and everything.
Yeah, there was definitely improvement, definitely some good movement. Um, there's some there's some things going on that are at least are hopeful.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. All right, we have one more thing to get to, and that is your mailbag questions. We've got some good ones, and we will do that coming up next. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They've got killer deals on last minute tickets, and with their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting excited for all the fun you'll have. My favorite part of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about last minute tickets and flash deals. Plus, you can get that all important view from your seat. Game Time has deals right up to the start of the event and even up to an hour after it starts, so it's the place to find your last minute seat. Also, your tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On tomorrow's show, we will be talking Flyers versus Canes and a prospect profile of Colin Griff. So your mailbag questions were a good mix. There was more of an anonymous user on YouTube who asked the question, will Denver Barkey develop into a better version of Brink? I'd be surprised if both of them were on the ultimate version of this team.
Uh Yeah, I would say Barkey is probably the better shot than Brink at this point. Not really all Brink's fault. I think it just hasn't worked out with this coach. Oddly enough, he did have a shot on goal last night that I thought was pretty good, and it didn't even register. Like, it didn't it's not even registered in the game, but I saw it, and I remember noting it in my head. There was weird things going on with the shots on goal at the, place yesterday. That's all I could tell you, that it didn't seem the totals didn't seem right at times.
Yeah, I would say that. Our friend Chris Berry wanted to talk about towards his track record and went into, he's good in the regular season, but not the playoffs, and, the kind of sandpaper approach he had in Tampa to win that Stanley Cup. And says something that we've been alluding to. Chris says short-term winning has a short-term impact. And I thought that was a really interesting way of putting it,
It
right?
is. Yeah, that's a smart statement. I agree with that, and that's why it's hard when you do have a coach that's trying to do things short term. You have a GM that's trying to do things long term. That's where it gets a little muddy in the middle.
Yeah, and I think that the short-term impact has been very good, and you can't deny that. And I think there has been some good things, and the culture change has been good. But like with the Couturier scratching, little things like that with this coach could have impact down the road, and it's just something to keep an eye on. And how this offseason goes is going to be, like, I think, really important, and I think will show really whose approach is going to win out in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Chris Fiore wants to know, aren't the fandoms in a playoff spot or a play in a spot, regarding our Fandoms Tuesday talk earlier this week? And the Phantoms are in a playoff spot. So Chris wants to know, why are we saying they have no shot and have to win 12 out of 14 games? And they are currently in sixth place, but there are, teams around them that have been playing better. And they're only just barely in that sixth spot because
Right.
Springfield was having such a tough time of it. And I do think it's more likely than it was prior to last weekend than that they'll make the playoffs for sure. Again, given what Springfield has done, but on the other hand, it's not a guaranteed thing either. So
No. It's a
and I
point
would
difference between the two teams.
yeah, and I would say, given the fact that the other part of it that we didn't talk about earlier is that the Ginning and Lycksell call-ups were regular call-ups. They were not
Right.
emergency call-ups for this team. Flyers have now burned all their regular call-ups.
Right.
So it seems like they're going to be sticking with the Flyers at least until the injuries are dealt with or not dealt with, as the case may be. Phantoms are going to be missing like a lot of top guys. And so
Yes,
for them to stay in this playoff spot, given all that, is going to be a huge, huge challenge.
it will be. And it's all of those things.
Yeah, so I think that's really the aspect we're talking about. It's just they have a diminished lineup right now, so to hold on to the spot is going to be a really big problem. But hopefully they can do it, and they
Yeah,
they
we're not
start.
rooting against it, that's for sure.
Yeah, so then they've got a game coming up tonight, so we'll see how that goes. Um, Michael Kamenis, 8878, was talking about John Mustard. We did a profile of him last week on the show for draft eligibility and just said, my friend's son was drafted to attend Waterloo for Camp Are the Blackhawks, a
Mhm.
good program for development. I sent him your analysis of Mustard. Thanks for that. And thank you for listening to
Yeah,
that.
we
And glad
appreciate
you
it.
have yeah, glad you have a connection to Waterloo.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, the whole league is a good place for
It
development.
is. It really is.
And Alex wants to know, is there anyone else the Flyers will honor like Wayne Simmonds when they hit retirement?
Well, I mean, Claude Giroux, um, I mean, Voracek hit retirement. He's been with the team a little, but they haven't really done that yet. It's possible they might do something for him.
I would think so, right?
Yeah, I could see that. That's about it. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, honestly. Well, I mean,
Yeah, I
when Scott Lawton retires, sure, but that's 5 years from now.
it also depends on if, like, he goes elsewhere. I think,
Yeah,
Voracek again went back to Columbus, but could he come back and do a one-day contract to sign or to retire a Flyer? I
he
think because
technically
he
could.
or, like, trade his rights back
Right.
from wherever they are now
They
to
technically could if they wanted to.
yeah. Yeah. So, I hope they do because I think that Voracek is just one of those people and his personality that,
Yeah.
to have a day to honor him would be super cool.
And like I
So,
said,
I
I
would
could see
look
Lawton
forward to
too if he
that.
stay if even if he gets traded like for 1 year to go on a cup run and it's not here, whatever. Um, I could see it happening.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a lot of fun. But that will do it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. And it does not get any easier for the Flyers as they
No.
face the Carolina Hurricanes coming up next. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you've got mailbag questions you want us to answer, you can send us your questions via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day.